My name is Emily Garcia, and today I will be presenting chapters 2 through 5 from the project management book. So chapter 2 was about project management in IT. So these are the basic learning objectives for this chapter. And one of the learning objectives is to describe the system's view of project management and how it essentially applies to IT projects. And the last one is describe recent trends affecting project management, including globalization, outsourcing, virtual teams, and agile project management. So to begin, a system view of project management. And if project managers essentially lead their projects in isolation, it is really unlikely that they will ever truly serve the needs of the organization. So to begin with a project is really important to keep in mind what exactly the needs of the organization is. So therefore, projects must operate in broad organizational environments, and project managers need to consider projects within the greater context of the organization. And this leads us to the next point, which is a holistic approach versus a general approach. And this leads into system thinking. So system thinking essentially describes the holistic approach and view of carrying out projects within the context of the organization. And this general holistic approach is going to be very useful throughout this chapter, so let's keep that in mind as well. So what exactly is a system approach? A system approach emerged in the 1950s, and it's used to describe a holistic and analytical approach to solving complex problems, which include a systems philosophy, system analysis, and system management. So systems essentially are a set of interacting components that work well within an environment to fulfill some type of purpose. And it is really easy to think of organizations as also as systems as well. And what is exactly the overall model for thinking about these systems? So that's another thing to keep in mind. And again, what is a system analysis exactly? So a system analysis is a problem-solving approach that requires defining the scope of a system, dividing it into components, and then identifying and evaluating problems, opportunities, constraints, and needs. And this is going to be important further down the line as well. So to keep in mind, using a system approach is really critical to a successful project management. And they need to essentially identify key stakeholders and satisfy key stakeholders and do what's the best for the entire organization as well. So the next one is the 3-sphere model for systems management. And the 3-sphere model essentially addresses the 3 spheres of the systems management, which include business, organization, technology, and can have a huge impact on selecting and managing projects successfully. But projects also need to address the issues within the 3 spheres of the system management model. So in order to be successful, they have to address all 3 and not just one. And even though it's easier to focus on the immediate and sometimes narrow concerns of a particular project managers and other staff really must recognize the effects of any project on and interests and needs of the entire system or organization. And again, this ties into the holistic approach, which essentially allows managers to integrate business and organizational issues into their planning. And it also helps them look at projects as a set of interrelated phases. And what this really does is ensure you doing a better job of ensuring project success. So understanding organizations. A system approach requires that project managers always view their projects in the context of the larger organization. So this really tackles the issue of asking questions about how will this affect us? How will this affect us in any way? So it's really important to spend enough time identifying all stakeholders, spending enough time considering the political context of the project and culture of the organization, and to develop a better understanding of the people as well as organization. So 4 frames of organizations. And to organize your organization better, it is really important to focus on the different perspectives, and it's really helpful as well. So to begin with the first one, the structural frame deals with how the organization is really structured. And the best example for this is to think about a school. The school has different departments, including history, science, and they really don't overlap. The HR frame focuses on producing harmony between the needs of the organization and the needs of the people. So this is geared more towards people and problems like work scheduling, sicknesses, stuff like that. The political frame addresses the organizational and personal politics. So politics in organization takes form of competition among groups, or individuals for power, resources, and leadership. So it's really important to focus on the political frame in order to reduce any type of conflict between power or resources. So the symbolic frame, again, this is the last one, it focuses on symbols and meanings. So what exactly does this mean? For example, what is the sign of a CEO coming to a meeting for a project? Was this a threat? Was this good? How should people dress? How many hours do they work? How do they run meetings? So this is really something that is dealing with the whole symbolic nature of actions. So the organizational structure. And there are 3 organizational structures. These are general classifications, which include functional, projects, and matrix. And as you can see in the picture to the left of the text, it's a brief little breakdown of what it looks like as well. So to begin with, the functional organization structure is a hierarchy, and this is what most people think of when they think organizational structures. And this includes CEOs. So people in different departments such as engineering, manufacturing, IT, and HR report directly to the CEO. And each of their staff is specialized in their respective departments. And the project organizational structure is also hierarchical, but instead of functional managers or vice presidents reporting to the CEO, the program managers report to the CEO. Their staff has a variety of skills needed to complete the projects within the programs, and the organization that uses the structure earns its revenue primarily through performing projects for other groups under contract. And finally, the matrix organizational structure is essentially the middle ground between the two. If you look at the pictures, the project organizational structure has program manager A, while the functional doesn't have that. That one has more VPs and managers. And as you look at the matrix, that one has a mixture of both. So personnel often reports to both functional manager or one or more of the project managers. And it is important for project managers to understand their current organizational structure. So with that being said, it's easier for them to kind of ask which direction they should go to, solicit support, and separate, for example, budgets, trips, meetings. So it's really something that definitely needs to be understood. The next is organizational culture. And organizational culture is essentially a set of shared assumptions, values, and behaviors that characterize the functioning of an organization. It really includes all 4 of the frames that were discussed previously. And it can be really powerful. And many people believe that the underlying causes for many of companies' problems is not in the organizational structure, but more in the culture. So this includes member identity, group emphasis, people focus, unit integration, control, risk tolerance, reward criteria, conflict tolerance, means and ends orientation, and system focus. So to describe briefly a few of them, for example, unit integration is the degree to which units or departments within an organization are encouraged to coordinate with each other. So definitely communication is really heavy in that. And conflict tolerance is the degree to which employees are encouraged to air out conflicts and criticism openly. So it's definitely really important to be able to take criticism into consideration and to basically be able to handle criticism as well. And project work is really the most successful in organizational culture where employees really identify themselves more with the organization and don't really see their job as a job. They really enjoy the culture and are really submissive in that. So focusing on stakeholder needs. And internal project stakeholders include project sponsor, project team, support staff, and internal customers of the project. And it is really critical that project managers take to identify, understand, and manage relationships with all project stakeholders. And using the 4 frames of the organization can really help you meet their needs. And their purpose is a project manager, it really is to meet the project requirements and satisfy stakeholders. So it is really critical that project managers take adequate time to really understand what their stakeholders are really expecting from them. So what is the importance of top management commitment? Without commitment, a lot of projects will fail. And a lot of projects have a senior manager assigned to them, which is called a project champion. And it really serves as a key advocate for this project. They can help with acquiring resources, to make sure that the project has enough money, HR, and visibility. Project managers often require approval, and having a project champion really can speed that process up. And top management is to projects crucial because of the need for, again, resources, approval, cooperation, and leadership. And these are really key items for a project to really be successful. So what is the need for organizational commitment? It really honestly affects the project's overall success. Again, without a successful project, there's really nothing there. And a lot of the times, a chief information officer is assigned to each company. And what they really do is they really play a crucial role in gaining organizational commitment to IT, as well as motivation and support from IT workers, which that is really a good base to work with. So the need for organizational standards. A lot of the times, another problem in most organizations is the lack of standards or guidelines to follow when performing project management. So these guidelines may be as simple as providing standard forms or templates, or even how to provide top management with status information. So the context of project management plan and instructions for providing the status may seem like common sense, but to some people it's really not. So having good organizational standards, again, ensures that your project will be definitely successful. And sometimes people have never created plans or created non-technological, status report. So again, it's really important to have a organizational standard. So project phases and project life. The project life cycle is a collection of phases, and these phases include deliverable, project feasibility, project acquisition. And again, it's divided into several phases. So the project cycle essentially defines what work will be performed in what phase and how, and what deliverables will be produced when, who is involved in each phase, and how management will control and approve the work produced in each phase. So going back to the word deliverable, deliverable is essentially a product or service such as a technical report, training session, which is produced or provided as part of the project. So that's really important to keep in mind. In early phases of the project cycle, resources are usually the lowest and have the highest level of uncertainty. So again, having a project champion is really important. And going to the final phase of the project, it really focuses on ensuring that the project requirements were met and that the project sponsor approves of the completion of the project. Most companies don't really follow a traditional project model, and they're a lot more flexible, so that's something to keep in mind as well. So project life phases. IT projects are used to develop products and services such as new software, hardware, and new systems. So most IT professionals are familiar with the concept, especially in developing software. So a key model of one of them is a system developing lifecycle, which is a framework for describing the phases of developing information systems. And each one of these there are different models as well. And the models include the water life, spiral life, incremental build life, prototyping cycle life, the RAD life. So it's a really kind of complex model. And for the sake of time to talk about the water life cycle, it's a cycle or a model that has well-defined linear stages, while the spiral life was developed more on like an emphasis on government projects. And it's more of a spiral approach rather than a whole linear approach. So what is the importance of project phases in management reviews? A project should successfully pass through each one of the main project phases before continuing to the next to again ensure project success. Because organization usually commits more money as the project continues, the management review should occur after each phase to evaluate project potential success and again to evaluate the compatibility with organizational goals. So management reviews called phase exits or kill points are very important for projects to keep on track in determining whether or not they should be continued, redirected, or terminated. And by breaking projects into phases, top management can ensure that the projects are still compatible with the organizational needs. Again, this is really important. So the nature of IT products. IT products are really diverse. And unlike many industries, again, it's really diverse and they involve a wide range of people, software, and effort. Some projects involved a small number of people installing off-the-shelf hardware and associated with a small amount of software. So it's really important to keep the size of your project in mind. And IT products really support every possible industry and business function. They range from medical to essentially corporate. And what are the characteristics of IT project team members? Because IT projects are really diverse, people come from really different backgrounds and possess different skills. So the resulting diverse project teams provide a significant advantage because they can analyze project requirements from a more robust view. And it's rare for technical specialists and project managers to remain with the same company for a really long time. So diverse technologies. People often with the same IT job do not function or understand each other because they really use different technology. So it's really important to keep in mind what type of technology your company is using. And there's also problems with diverse technologies. A project team might be close to finishing, but can find new technology which can offset their timeline. And new technologies have also shortened the business time frame as well. So recent trends affecting IT. These include globalization, outsourcing, virtual teams, agile project management, and Scrum, as well as the manifesto for agile software development. So globalization is really obvious. This is the expansion to many different countries, and this, again, can really offset your IT team. So chapter 3. Chapter 3 is about project management process, and these are the learning objectives. So the last one is to describe several templates for creating documents for each process group. So what a process group is, project management process groups are essentially a way to keep track of progress from initiating activities to planning activities, executing activities, monitoring and controlling activities, and closing activities. Let's see. So developing an IT project management methodology. So it's important to keep in mind the difference between a standard and methodology. So a standard really describes the best practices for what should be done to manage a project, while the methodology describes how things should be done. And the Projects in Controlled Environments, or PRINCE2, was really released, and it really describes 8 processes for a methodology, essentially. And it begins by starting a project, planning the project, initiating a project, directing a project, and then controlling a stage, managing project delivery, managing stage boundaries, and closing the project. That's important to keep in mind as well. So developing an IT project management methodology continued. There are agile methods, which is a form of adapted software development. They include an iterative workflow and incremental delivery of software with sort iterations. There's also a rational unified process, or RUP framework, and which essentially is an iterative software development process that focuses on team productivity and enables all team members of an organization to deliver the best practices. And then there's the Six Sigma methodology. And really, a lot of organizations have projects that use this methodology. And it really has a focus on defining, measuring, analyzing, improving, and controlling, used to improve an existing business process. So chapter 4. Chapter 4 is about project integration management, and the learning objectives include describing an overall framework for project integration and how it relates to knowledge areas in the project lifecycle. So what is project management? Project integration management involves the coordinating of all project management knowledge areas throughout the project lifecycle. So this is referring back to the project lifecycle. And according to the PM book guide, 5th edition, there are 6 main processes that are involved in project integration management, which include developing the project charter, which involves working with stakeholders to create a document that formally authorizes a project, which is the project charter. Number 2 is developing the project management plan. And this is coordinating efforts to create a consistent, coherent document. Number 3 is directing the managing process work. Number 4 is monitoring and controlling project work. Number 5 is performing integrated change control. And number 6 is closing the project or phase, which involves finalizing all activities to close the project or phase. And it is really important for good project integration management, because it's critical to providing key stakeholder satisfaction. So strategic planning and project selection. Strategic planning is really a process that determines the long-term objectives by analyzing the strengths, weaknesses of an organization, studying opportunities, threats in the business environments, predicting future needs, and projecting the needs for new products and services. And this is really a SWOT analysis, which identifies, again, strengths, needs, weaknesses, opportunities, and it's really used among all aspects of business, and it really can help to determine what exactly the organization needs. And some people like to perform the SWOT analysis by using mind mapping, which is a technique that uses branches radiating from a core idea to structure thoughts and ideas. So methods for selecting a project. Focusing on broad organizational needs. So this leads people to ask the question of, do people in the organization agree with the project? Is there a strong will to make the project succeed? And you can really categorize IT projects by problems, which are undesirable situations that prevent an organization from achieving its goal, opportunities, which are chances to improve the organization, or directives that are new requirements imposed by the management, government, or some other external force. So using a weighted scoring method, you can really identify criteria that is really most important to the project. And you want to make sure that your project has a strong internal sponsor and has strong customer support. And you also want to keep in mind to implement a balanced scorecard. It really helps organizations to align business activities to strategy, improve communications, and monitor performance against strategic goals. So next is developing a project charter. So project charter is really a document that formally recognizes the existence of a project and provides direction on the project's objectives and management. So as you can see on the right-hand side, this is an example of a project charter. And it really authorizes the project manager to use organizational resources to complete the project. And ideally, the project manager plays a major role in developing the project charter. So the steps to developing a charter include a project statement of work, business case agreements, enterprise environmental factors, organizational project assets, which is a formal and informal plans, policies, procedures, and guidelines that can influence the project's overall success. So a project management plan is something also that is important. It's a document used to coordinate all project planning documents and help guide the project's execution and control. And this really should contain the project's name, sponsor name, names of the project manager and key team members, deliverables, and the list of important reference materials, list of definitions, and acronyms. So directing and managing project work. It really involves managing and performing the work described in the project management plan, which is one of the main implements of this process. A project manager needs to focus on leading the project team and managing stakeholders' relationships to execute the project management plan successfully. The steps include coordinating, planning, execution, providing strong leadership and supportive culture, capitalizing on product, business, and application area knowledge, and proper project execution tools and techniques. Monitoring and controlling project work. So this includes collecting, measuring, and disseminating performance information. And important outputs of monitoring and controlling project work include change requests and performance reports. So performing integrated change control. Integrated change control involves identifying, evaluating, and managing changes throughout the project lifecycle. And the three main objectives are influencing the factors that create changes to ensure that changes are beneficial, And this makes sure that the project is successful. Project managers and their team must make trade-offs among key project dimensions such as scope, time, cost, and quality. Determining that a change has occurred. To determine a change that has occurred, a project manager must know the status of key projects at all times. And managing actual changes as they occur, it is important to exercise discipline in managing the project to minimize the number of changes that occur. Change control on a project. It is obvious that all projects will have some type of changes, and some changes might make sense, but others are too large to fit into a current project. And a change control system is a formal documented process that describes when and how official documents may be changed. A change control board is a formal group of people responsible for approving or rejecting the changes to a project. A configuration management ensures that the descriptions of a project's products are correct and complete. It involves identifying and controlling the functional and physical designs of characteristics and support their documentation. So the closing projects on phases. This is the final step, and it really has an emphasis on the final product, service, and result of transition. And it is important for organizational process to set updates and should provide a list of documentation, closure documents, and historical information provided by the project. And now Chapter 5. Chapter 5, key learning objectives are understanding the importance of a good project scope management. So what exactly is project scope management? It really includes a set of processes that are involved in defining and controlling what it is or not to include in a project. And these six main processes include planning, scope management, collecting requirements, defining scope, creating WBS, validating scope, and controlling scope. So controlling scope involves controlling changes to a project scope throughout the life of the project. And it may be a challenge on many IT projects. So planning scope management. In general, it should include the following information, which includes how to prepare a detailed project statement. And this leads to ask the questions of, are there templates or guidelines we need to follow, and how much detail is needed to describe each deliverable, how to create a WBS, how to maintain and approve the WBS, how to obtain formal acceptance of the completed project deliverable, how to control requests for changes of the project scope. And collecting requirements, it's really often the most difficult step, and there's major consequences, which include reworking the project. And collection includes benchmarking, which is the generating of ideas by comparing specific project practices of project characteristics to those of other projects or products inside or outside performing organization. And this could be used to collect requirements, and the requirements traceability matrix, which is a table that lists requirements, their various attributes, and the status of requirements to ensure that all are addressed, which is really important to ensure project success, which is the overall major topic. So defining the scope. It is important to have a good scope for project success because it helps improve the accuracy, time, cost, and resource estimates. It defines a baseline for performance management, measurement, and project control. And it also aids in communicating clear work responsibility. Project scope statements should include at least product scope description, product user acceptance criteria, and a detailed information on all project deliverables. It is really helpful in scope other related information, such as boundaries, constraints, and assumptions. So this is really essential to understanding what is really required of the project. So creating a work breakdown structure. It is really a deliverable-oriented grouping of the work involved in the project and defines that total scope. Most projects involve many people and many different deliverables, so it's really important to organize and divide the work that makes sense and is really logical and based on how the work will be performed. The main tool or technique, which is decomposition, really is that of dividing the projects into smaller pieces to make it more manageable. And the work package is the lowest task of the WBS, and it really represents the level of work that project managers monitor and controls. So approaches to developing a work breakdown. And to the right of the text, you can see an example of a work breakdown. And it is really important to use several approaches, such as using guidelines, the analogy approach, top-down approach, bottom-up approach, and mind mapping approach. The analogy approach, you really use similar projects, WEBS, as a starting point. So you really want to compare the two. In the bottom-down approach, the team members first identify as many specific tasks related to the project as much as possible. Validating your scope. It is really difficult to create a good project scope and a WBS for a project. And it's really more difficult to verify the project scope and minimize scope changes. So you really want to avoid scope creep, which is the tendency for project scope to keep getting bigger and bigger. And you really have to ask yourself what exactly went wrong. And another really important thing is the scope validation, which really is involving the formal acceptance of the completed project deliverables. And it's really achieved by customer inspection, and then they really sign off on what the key deliverables are. And controlling your scope. You have to define what your main goals, and the main goals of controlling your scope is to influence the factors that cause scope changes and ensure that changes are really processed and developed as an integrated part of control, and to manage changes as they occur. So you don't want to let the changes really take control of your project or really offset you. And variance is something to also keep in mind, and it's a really helpful tool to performing scope control. Variance really is the difference between planned and actual performance. So you really want to compare what your actual performance was and what your planned performance was to determine where exactly you went wrong, what went right, and what we can do better next time. So using software to assist in project management. Project management, you can use all types of software such as spreadsheets, Word documents, and it really organizes your information, and it really allows you to collect your information better to make them more manageable, validate your scope, and manage changes in your project scope. And thank you for watching.